Well, Rajashree is in Thailand and it's 4 a.m. her time. And she did give us a thumbs up that she'd be joining us. So I think we should just get started anyway and then hope that she, chimes in. And she's done that before, regardless of what time it is, she's come on. So let's hope she does that too. Would anybody like to start with a question? Jump right in.
Deathly silence.
No question's a bad question. In fact, as you guys know, it just brings on great conversation. Great conversation. Yes, Lenora, go ahead.
So, hey, everybody. I didn't see you all, so I'm sorry. I was just blabbering. My question is, and it kind of started in the middle of the pandemic, so when we were all doing things at home, but I would roll my mat up. But I've noticed that I have dark spots at the base of both knees, right? And so between camel and fixed firm, when you start on your knees and you sit down on your heels and then you move hopefully not your knees, but you're moving your feet out to the side. I'm wondering if I'm just putting too much weight on my knees and that is why I'm having these dark circles. I can't really get rid of them and I didn't have them before and I've been practicing, for like 10 years prior to that. So I'm just kind of wondering, A, is that normal? I know some people say they have pressure points under their chin, and B, how I might redistribute something to avoid that, if it's avoidable.
I actually have a couple of experiences with that. So I did have a much larger pressure point. I have nothing really. I can just more or less feel it. As a beginner, I did have like a rough patch under my chin from locust. And I don't have it at all now. I can just feel a slight difference. But the other one was that I did have on my elbows dark patches, and many people have them on the knees like you do from doing fixed firm, until I used my muscles and slid less because I was sort of sliding into it and dragging my elbows across the mat. That was my experience of it. So the more muscle strength I used, the more stability I had, the more I could just come down, or the less these things were occurring.
I had it on my knees early on in my practice, and it went away when I learned to be more at ease in some of those positions. So I can't say that I properly understand the science of why it happens, though it's extremely common. But at least my experience was related to when I could kneel down with some grace rather than tenseness. And what I would imagine, if we looked at the science of it, is probably that as you relax the whole muscle, you haven't got a single defined point of contact. You've got a wide surface area contacting the floor. Whereas when you're tense, it creates a more pointedness in the body, which would localize the contact and the pressure into a more specific area of the body.
It's an interesting thing, though, because we're coming from opposite ends of stability and mobility, and we've both arrived in the middle.
Yes.
So the proper balance of mobility and stability, we both come from different ends.
Yeah.
It seems like the same answer, but from the opposite side.
It's like sometimes, we'll say to students about, that part of the goal where we start as beginners with a certain fierceness and intensity, like locking the knee, for instance. But the journey is to find the grace and the ease so that you can fully engage your leg, for instance, calmly. And it's still fully engaged, it's fully locked, but it's calmly engaged. And to begin with, you kind of have to overdo it a little bit. You have to kind of go, but and I think it's finding that in every part of our body and in every way we move. And it obviously is a long journey. It's not something that happens overnight. But I would say, look at when you kneel down, where are you tensing muscles in your leg, in your thigh, in your calf, in your ankle, in the top of your foot. Just start to observe where you're holding that tension, and that might give you some insight as to just notice it's tense and let it go a little bit.
And what postures did you say? Fixed, firm, and what? Lenora?
Camel for sure.
And does it hurt?
No, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. But what's interesting when you talk about going down with a bit more grace, when I first started, the studio had a bamboo floor. And so you had to go down very gently, because if you didn't, you would hit just one part of your knee. And then, I started in the carpeted areas and it just, or like at home, I had my mat and I could kind of put a lot more pressure down without getting the pain, because wood floor will cause pain. So it's fascinating. So that could explain a lot of it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used to have something under my chin too. I'm not sure I can relate to what you guys are talking about, other than in my beginning days in Padahastasana, I had cuts on my middle fingers.
Oh.
So, and it goes back to what Matt and Sarah are saying, right? The friction was extra. I had extra pressure on my middle knuckle, right? I used to wear Band-Aids on these two fingers. That's not very nice, is it? But that's what I used to do at teacher training, right? But I suspect, right, there's added friction in areas until it balances out, right?
So I can, just my experience is that, yes, like anything you are doing repetitively, similar posture, the skin is soft and it can have friction. The touch with the mat or the floor, it's only normal to have that kind of dark spot shows up. As Matt and Sarah mentioned, and Michelle also said that, like, it's like where you're putting the most pressure, like core, your core has to be tight, and more than putting pressure on the knees. So those are things to make sure that hip muscle nice and tight, doing the posture, stomach sucked in, so your body gets lighter and not so much pressure on the knees or ankle, wherever you are putting the pressure and making the spot or the chin. Be mindful when you already know the issues, and it only happened. Other example I can give, I have that, but it's light and slowly because I know not to put so much pressure on that. So using more, engaging my muscles helps. And another example I can give over the years, as Muslim religion, the people pray 5 times a day. So anything you're doing repetitively, some people get a spot on the forehead because they are bowing down and touching the mat, forehead on the mat. So they develop, some of them, not everyone, that spot there on the knees as well. So anything repetitive we are doing and not paying attention to that, like how we are touching it. And if you engage your muscle and suck your stomach in, I think it's a lot less happen that way. However, if you already have developed this spot and you know what to do next, you already know. Other thing is vitamin C, fruit a little bit. It will lessen the spot and it's not bad. And any product or lotion will help that has coconut ingredients in it, so it will help. So
Interesting. Yeah. Good awareness, though, Lenora. I mean, I was just listening to Bikram in his lectures at teacher training, and one of these 5-minute clips is all about balance, right? And the great thing is that the more yoga you do, the more heightened awareness you have, and you start to see areas that aren't in balance. I mean, that being one of them. So what is that about, right? And so get information, and then maybe you're leaning too much in one area and not the other. There's not balance, right? So
yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah, we have a question from Kamal.
Go ahead, Kamal.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm joining. I found this through my constant learning. I'm a fairly new teacher, 2019.
Nice.
Congratulations.
And then luckily, thank you. The studio that I used to practice in got me teaching straight away. And then COVID came, so I was thrown in at the deep end. So I got then having to teach on Zoom. So that was an extra challenge. But it was lovely because you were practicing as well as teaching at the same time, which was tough because you're talking and also doing the postures, but then you can't see people. But it got me to sort of like focus on the dialogue.
Yeah.
So I just stick to the dialogue, stick to the dialogue, stick to the dialogue. And then people started to come back to the studio.
Where do you teach?
So it's a studio in Stockport in Manchester. So
nice.
I'm also, but it's not a Bikram studio because they reopened as a Hot 26.2 studio. Where I used to practice was a Bikram studio in Manchester, but he sadly, I went on holiday, came back to go and book classes and it closed.
Oh.
So I was like, oh no, what do I do now? So for 3 years, I was in the wilderness because there is nothing where I am.
Oh.
And then one of the teachers opened this studio up in Stockport. And then I sort of like spent 2 years trying to figure out whether I wanted to drive all that way from where I live. And in the end, I thought, well, it's the only thing that I found that I connected with. It's the one thing when I walked into that studio and helped me switch completely off from the outside world.
Nice.
And not think about my work. I'm a real estate agent, so I own my own business. So it's the only thing that stopped me thinking. So that's why I stuck with it. And then one of the teachers went, you'd be great at teaching. So, and I'm like, no, I can't do what you guys do. But anyway, so I've been learning, and then I sort of found humans of Bikram yoga. And then I've been looking at a lot of Terry Elmquist's videos and Diane's videos. Every free second I get, I go on these things. I'm now working through your videos, Michelle, and going through all the stuff on there. And I'm learning so much from just watching these things and listening to people's questions and the answers that are coming back. Because for me, it's like every single day is learning more and more and more and more. And I realize how little I actually know. So thank you so much for that. And the other thing I wanted to say was, when I do eventually open my own studio, your studio is what is in my head already, what I want it to look like.
Yes.
It looks amazing. And one day, hopefully, I'll get over there and practice.
Oh, it'd be great. Yes.
Make a plan.
We'd love to help you. We'd love to help you. Congratulations. I'm glad you're here with us. Yes.
Yeah. So I've already got a list of things I want to do, what I need to do, my business plans in place. I nearly found a space last week, but unfortunately the lease wasn't going to be right for me. So I've let that go, but I'm sort of leaving it out there in the universe. When the time is right, it will come to me. So
wonderful.
Wonderful, yeah.
But standing head to knee, block that knee. My nemesis. Do I still have to just keep struggling to try and get that knee knocked, or should I be happy with what I can do and lifting that leg up and just being grateful for the fact that at my age, I can do that and just go, you know what, that's enough.
So
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, you're locking your knee is I mean, we actually teach a quarterly workshop. We teach quarterly workshops, and one of the 4 workshops we teach is all about legs.
Right.
And relates actually to what Lenora was talking about at the beginning of the call. Your locking of your knee is something that absolutely everybody can do, unless they've had some profound structural damage to their body. That it's absolutely doable. It's a whole leg experience. The term is lock the knee, but that's really describing the outcome of what it is that you're doing. That the knee can't bend, that it's quote unquote locked. But it's a whole leg phenomena. And so there are many different things you can do to help yourself learn. But the key thing to remember is that you are extending your leg. Your leg is getting longer, and it's getting longer from deep in the hip all the way down in through the heel and the big toe. So whether you're standing on it, so that means your foot's at a right angle to your leg, or you're doing balancing stick and it's the lifted leg, so you're pointing the toes, the same in Cobra and other similar postures, you're extending. And so if you can think about extending that leg, if you can, like, you're sitting, looks like you're sitting on a sofa. If you lift one leg up in front of you and push the foot away from you, push through the heel, and then also simultaneously, once you've got that, try to push through the ball of your foot, you'll start to engage all of the muscles of your leg, both not just the front thigh muscles, but the inside muscles, the outside muscles, the back muscles, the whole thing. And it's absolutely accessible. But what tends to happen is that people get stuck because they're doing some of what it takes to lock the knee, but they're not. There's a whole bunch of missings that aren't happening. And so then you kind of get stuck trying, and you're not quite sure why you're stuck. So, yeah, I mean, we did a blog post actually on locking the knee on legs as a foundation of life.
I probably haven't got to it yet. I am working through this.
It's not that long, but I would say start by experiencing extending your leg and try it even outside of doing the postures, like sitting on the sofa, push your foot away from you, push to the heel so powerfully you get a cramp on the top of the thigh muscle, which of course is part of our dialogue, kick the heel forward, turn the foot in at the angle, 5 toes coming towards your face.
Yeah.
But you'll start to get a sense that it is everything. So Lenora's describing that she'd had a private that had her focus on a more comprehensive use of her leg, and that automatically started to have roll-on side effects that were beneficial about stabilization of the hips and the anchor at the base of the spine and yada yada yada, because it's all very, very connected. So don't at any point give up on it, because it's accessible whether you're 85 years old or you're 6 months old. Even a baby could lock their knee. They don't yet have the practiced experience of their body, but it's not something that's special that only some people can do.
In fact,
thank you.
On one of those, I don't know if you practice any of his recorded classes, but on one of them, Bikram says anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. It's like, and often just the technique is behind it, not some problem with your body.
Yeah.
Years and years, I thought I couldn't do locust at all, and it wasn't I didn't know how to extend my legs backwards. So once I could, then I could do locust, but I didn't.
That's a strange thing in standing, in balancing stick, in locust and stuff. I can get those legs straight behind me, and they're locked.
Then it's it's not applying the same technique, the same thought. So it's the same.
I think probably
because of the relationship, how you're standing on it, but it is the same principle.
Yeah. I mean, you can practice it in. There's a famous teacher, BKS Iyengar, who used to joke that he would teach his more advanced students standing up straight as a posture for 30 minutes. So he'd have people simply standing up straight for 30 minutes as he walked around and poked them and commented on what they were or weren't doing. Yeah. And so if you stand up very straight and you feel your feet flat down on the floor, like you could push them down into the floor so that your legs are getting longer and stronger. If you see your thighs are pulling back into your body, your buttocks pushing forward, your abdomen coming in, your chest lifting. So you're really actively standing up straight. You will start to experience that totality of the leg. And that's exactly what we do in standing head to knee.
Right. Okay. I think it's my technique.
One leg is on the ground and one leg is in the air, but it's exactly the same actions that we're taking.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to highlight another component to it also. Kamal, is that how you say your name? Kamal?
It is perfect,
Kamal. Mary Jarvis will tell you too, and she's told a room full of people this, that we all have the capacity to do it. It's just a matter of repetition, right? And so the other key component though, which I think is beautiful with where you're at, is even in the beginning when you started talking about this, right? You were almost, you can hear yourself almost stating to yourself, you know what, I'm going to accept myself, right, just as this is, which really is the moment your yoga starts.
Yeah.
Because, the yoga is asking you to go further than what you think you can do. Yeah. The yoga is asking you to go further with your determination, to not lose hope, to gain that faith, right? Because you do have the capacity to do it with all these, components that Matt and Sarah are talking about, but you have to also believe, keep an open mind, right? Which is what we're doing in the class, right? Mind over the matter, right? By doing those actions, you're pushing through doubts that are saying that you're stuck or you can't do this. So it's extremely important actually, because it's giving you more than just what you're going to get physically. Absolutely. Right? And you want to open a studio, right? So So
Yeah, it's the same thing I tell the students in front of me. You got to keep believing and acceptance, but you also need to move forward, and that's when the yoga starts. And I do actually say
remember,
that.
we're using the body as a medium to train the mind,
Yeah,
right? So
Yeah.
you're at a great spot. You're at a really good sweet spot to bring yourself even further into what you're capable of. And you're just doing it by way of standing head to knee.
yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad you're with us, and congratulations. I
Thank you. I'm
appreciate
so glad
that.
I found you guys.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you're with us, and we will be happy to help you. We've been around the block a few times, and obviously our goal is to make sure that this yoga spreads and thrives, and
Oh yeah.
be a part of this. Take advantage of it. It's great. It's awesome.
And Kamal, if you do find the blog post and you've still got some questions, just send me a private message, and I'd be happy to kind of walk you through it, because it's what we do in the workshop. There's some exercises and drills, but you can see it when people kind of go, oh,
Yes.
and then something happens, and suddenly you have much more facility with your body.
Yeah, I found
It's
I
not
had
really
that
about the leg or the
experience
knee;
in
it's about
stand- yeah.
everything.
This is
Yeah,
the
I
essence
had that
of-
experience in standing bow when it happened to me, and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
That's
essence of what Bikram says, having doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use it. And that process unfolds that you know how to use it. And then,
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey Kamal, there's a Rajashree video online that you can use, and I used it about a month ago, and I know it's in the dialogue and they talk about it, but she really focused on feeling what you're feeling. And I think sometimes with Bikram we get kind of stuck doing and thinking, and we forget feel our body. And that was a very different class that she taught, because it kind of took me out of thinking, doing, acting, and just, okay, what am I feeling while I'm doing this? And it kind of shifts something for you. But it's on, I think Michelle, it's still, I don't know, it's still up on the page. It was Rajashree class, and
it's on our YouTube
recently.
channel.
Yeah, I've got them all listed to watch in all. I did that earlier today. So yeah, it's on my It's not
Great.
Netflix for me, it's your YouTube channel for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Chris. Hi, Joel and Angie. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, hey there.
I like that beautiful piece of art behind you too. That's gorgeous.
Hey there. So nice to see all of you. Yay.
Nice to see you guys.
Vera's here too. She's just unavailable.
Okay. Another question?
We do have one that was submitted online, if nobody has a question on right now. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, go for it, Matt. Yeah.
Okay, so this one was from Mimi Stein. She said, personally, I've had trouble for years with half moon. I can never be sure I am bending correctly. I need guidance. I've never really felt the stretch on my sides. I feel it in my shoulders mostly, or in my back, which I know can't be right. That's the gist of the question. Yeah.
So what is she asking, Matt? You think she doesn't feel it?
So she says that she has never really felt the stretch on her sides, that she can feel it in her shoulders mostly or in her back, but not on her sides.
Well, I can relate to it because I never understood half moon for years. And a lot of that was because I was bending too much and I wasn't stretching enough.
Yes.
So, we have another workshop which is coming up, which is about extending the spine, stretching up out of the waist. In other words,
natural human traction
without a machine. So once I learned, and it was shameful how long it took me, to be honest. Once I learned to stretch up, and rather than focus on the bend but keep stretching and then push the hips, it started off very slow. I didn't get very far, and that was all right because that was the right technique. Now I can come down, it looks like I've bent, but I've actually stretched and stretched and stretched and pushed the hips. So again, Bikram, we've heard say, not a bending posture, a stretching posture. So even though the word comes in the dialogue, bend, there is a bend. The bend is created by the nature of stretching and pushing the hips. And once you get it, that's another of those aha moments. Until you get it, you struggle with it. But that's like, you know, once, and it can help. What happened to me actually was that Matt stretched and then pushed my hips. He shoved me, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
I held her
yeah,
hands
yeah.
in the air and then pushed the hip with my foot to, you know, so you imagine you were strung up, you know, by a rope to the ceiling, and then somebody keeps on hauling on the rope to get you longer and longer, like you're on a rack. And then somebody else comes and really pushes your hips to one side. Well, inevitably, you're going to feel a tremendous stretching on one side of your body. It's just inevitable.
So the light
at that
bulb
point
went on, and even so, when I started that process, which was probably a year ago, yes, something like that, year and a half, something like that. So the I didn't feel fingertips of the toes inside out, but now because I've improved it, and I can, and depth not being the point at all, but I can achieve greater depth by the same technique. I keep doing the same way. I now feel all of those, and for years I never felt. I mean, I would say it, but I would never, you know, when I taught it, but I didn't actually feel it because I was bending too much, and I wasn't stretching, and I wasn't pushing the hips. So,
it's also,
can I add? I want to add two components to that. Sorry, Matt. Is you guys, one of the biggest things that Bikram Yoga asks of you is always to have good form. Right? No bend in the elbows, no bend in the knees. Hard to feel a stretch if you're breaking form, right? Especially half moon. You bend the elbows a little bit, you know, open up the gap in your palms, have bent legs. There's no stretching going on, right? No bend in the elbows, no bend in the knees. And then the other component is in the very beginning, right? When you set yourself up, stretch up out of the waist, which is what you're saying about. You have to have those components before you even start. You can't and not break those components. Those components have to be there. And you see it if you're a teacher or you guys practicing. If you bend the elbows a little bit or break the form, you are falling. You are just collapsing.
Or she mentions the shoulders. If you don't stretch up out of the waist stays collapsed down. Then you go, and I'm going to try and strangle myself with my own shoulders. Okay, so it's like, arms touching with ears, elbows locked, but look, my shoulders are not up by my crown of my head. Then I go from the waist, and then I can stretch.
I mean, you can argue that it really all begins in the legs, because you know, every action we do with stretching involves some equal and opposite part of the body. And so you can't actually successfully stretch up out of the waist unless you're also stretching down from the waist, meaning that your legs are getting stronger. I mean, that's your foundation.
Yes, no bend in the knees.
So if you think about like one of those massive telescopic cranes, what does that crane do before it stretches up? It spreads its legs and it puts these big feet down into the ground, and it pushes them down into the ground to give it a solid foundation so that it can stretch up. If it didn't do that, it wouldn't be able to stretch up.
And you're starting that in pranayama, right?
Yes.
Remember, one posture leads to the next. And I've just heard Bikram in Thailand, and he's telling everybody to lock the knees in pranayama, standing deep breathing.
But I think, you know, to what Christy was saying about Rajashree's class, that I kind of related to that, you know, if you start to get related to your legs in extension, you can start to get related to your torso in extension. And so then half moon and balancing stick and any number of other postures you start to not think it, but you start to feel this powerful sense of extension, of stretching. And it can be very satisfying, but also very interesting.
It's interesting.
You start to realize that you haven't completely mastered it, that you're navigating fresh territory of how do I stretch? And oh my God, there's so much going on in stretching.
You know, you say an interesting point that I've been studying in the dialogue, and Kamal, you want to recognize this. That word feeling is scattered throughout the dialogue in various places. You should feel a tremendous stretching feeling all over the left side of your body, right? So you want to be doing it the right way and feel it. Yeah. It's a good question, and it really goes back to the heart and soul of, how we do our practice, right? It's a very good form.
Oh yeah. And do you see also, Michelle mentioned in the pranayama, and then, that no bend in the knees. You're already practicing locking your knees before you even got close to standing head to knee. You've got the technique, what Matt was talking about.
Also, going back to the sense of feeling. So, your body is a precision machine. And so if you put a nut on a bolt, and it's properly aligned and it's the right sizes, it will just feel clean,
Yeah.
simple. It turns, it's easy, it just feels right. But if it's misthreaded or it's the wrong size, it just jams and it feels horribly wrong. And so sometimes with practitioners who've been practicing Bikram for a long time, depending on the situations, their personal situation and the situations at their studios, you find that they're in their minds practicing what they think they should be doing, misthreaded, misaligned, and just jamming and jamming and jamming until eventually something kind of goes wrong. And then they go, well, the yoga doesn't work, or it's, hazardous for me. And in fact, so if you're getting stuck somewhere, it's really good to just back off, take a fresh start, and start very slowly coming back into it. Listen to the words of the dialogue and just do them and feel them, slowly engaging. Because when you do all these postures correctly, it should definitely feel right. There should be a natural sense that you're moving your body in a very naturally appropriate way.
I don't think it's the journey of a practitioner, right? It's humbling, because I think in the beginning as practitioners, we think we've got to go further, right? And then, we start to kind of become a little bit more aware, which is great. And then realize, okay, wait a minute, I'm breaking form. It's your own personal journey to kind of get rid of the end result, right? We go there first, right? And we're asking you to back up and then make sure that you're doing it the right way, and even go a little bit to feel it, as opposed to breaking form and moving into some depth that is completely wrong and not serving you, right? So
there was a workshop I attended by somebody called Lucas Miles, a Bikram teacher, some time ago, and he did this great little experiment specifically to the question that Mimi asked about Half Moon. He did this great little experiment where he had the person practice next to a mirror, where he'd drawn a horizontal line on the mirror at the point where they could reach up with their fingertips, at the top of where they could reach with their fingertips. And then he said, okay, now bend to the right, but keep your finger on the line. So as he bent, you had to stretch more and more and more, because otherwise your fingers would come away from the line. And obviously, eventually they come away from the line. But it was a very good, simple exercise to kind of relate yourself to, oh my God, I'm shortening and collapsing to come down, as opposed to I'm lengthening.
It's a good question, and it's common,
During one of our online live streams through Ann Studio, the teacher in that posture was saying, stretch and everything. And then she said something, she just said, and you'll feel it in your IT band. And I was like, what is she talking about? But as I stood more into the ground and stretched up more, and just didn't try to go over, just tried to stretch up, I actually, particularly the side with the very tight IT band, I actually felt it. And it was one of those, I know we've been saying this a lot today, one of those, moments. And it does change how you kind of stretch, at least how I stretch. And when I do that, that's when I start to, since Mimi mentioned her back, that's when I feel it, but it's not in the back. It's really all of the side muscles pulling, either up or down, depending on which part of your body. But just this idea of, stretching the IT band for some of us, that is also a great big help, because you can't stretch that if you bend or you lose your stomach in any way. It just won't happen. It was helpful.
Interesting.
I can
Yeah.
actually
Go ahead.
I can actually relate to this because when I try to do a stretch on the, I don't feel a stretch on the right side when I'm bending on the left, but I feel a pain on the left back. And, I wonder, why am I not feeling the stretch on the right side when I'm doing it? I wonder if it's because my left side is weak, the muscles are, so, maybe I'm doing it wrong, or I'm not too sure why I don't feel the stretch.
It's quite normal, Priyanka. I mean, as people start, it
Yeah.
takes some time to start to really understand at a cellular level how to use your body. So it's quite normal. I wouldn't in any way relate it to the stuff you're dealing with. It's most normal, for quite typical for people at first to not really feel that stretch, because you're waking up a connection between your mind and your body that may have never really been fully awake. Even, as a baby, you can't walk, and then you learn to walk, and at some point you say, okay, I mastered walking, so I can grab things, so obviously I know how to use my body. But of course we hadn't really got very far in the process of understanding how to use our body before we kind of stopped and called it a day and said, yeah, it's good. So that process now, as you practice, will continue, and you'll start to feel more and more connection and more capability. So yeah, I wouldn't try and attach a reason that relates to your body form or conditions you're dealing with or anything like that. I would just invite more attention to the words of the instruction, and starting to observe the extent to which you're doing that, and doing it with all of your body, rather than so Lenora mentioned the IT band, and I try to avoid mentioning specific muscle groups because what you were trying to do, and one of the things Bikram does with his teaching, is use very simple language that gets you connected to the totality of your body, rather than that, say, in the fitness world, where they'll just isolate and they'll start to name individual muscles and targets things that are meant to happen to individual muscles. And in Bikram, we're actually trying to get you a more comprehensive connection to your body.
Sarah, you want to?
Well, I was only as Priyanka, when we worked in Bikram Basics with Half Moon, you did a beautiful stretch both sides. Did that feel different when you did that? Because that was the correct technique you were doing then.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue is I don't feel a stretch on that side. I instead feel a pain on the left side. I mean, I'm doing it on the left, and I'm feeling a pain on the left side along the on the left side of the spine, where that muscle group is very tight. I feel a pain there rather than a stretch on my right side.
You might be more focused on the pain. It's taken away your ability to sense the stretch, because you were doing correctly that time.
Okay.
And I'd like to add too, Priyanka, you're a perfect example, where sometimes when we're starting a practice, that's why we say trust the process, because now you're becoming more aware. And even Rajashree will tell you that, you might feel, pain in the beginning, but really you're waking up muscles that you haven't used, in a long time. So these are things that you want to be careful, right? That you're not judging them or putting them in a bucket, categorizing them in the wrong way, right? Just let yourself kind of be aware and feel these things and concentrate right on breath and good form. And just, there's that balance thing again, right? Let it all balance out. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about yoga, is you're going to use things that you haven't used in a long time, right? You're going to find imbalances, which is great, right? And use the practice to help you create balance. And I think we have to be careful, because it's normal for us in our world today to try to then, surmise what that might mean. Don't do that. Right. Just stick with trusting the process. Yeah.
The other thing is, that we say when you prepare for Half Moon, stretch right and left, right and left, right and left, stretch out, try to touch the ceiling. You should feel stretching. These are Bikram's works, down both sides of the body, all the way up to the fingertips. So from where I am now, in my constantly refining and practicing, I do feel a stretch down both sides, and I'm aware of it. So even when I'm in my most deep of the posture, I'm still feeling a stretch down both sides. So there's nothing to worry about.
Also, it's, you know, one of the things that's kind of really cool about Bikram yoga is that we even do something like half moon, because the muscles that you're strengthening going side to side are muscles that most modern humans are very, very weak in.
Yeah.
But those muscles are so critical to
Yeah.
the health and the stability of the spine. So, for instance, people who have a reason to want to have a super robust spine, like people in special forces, Navy SEALs and such like, they do specific training on those side muscle groups, over the top training, to really build great robustness in their spine. But they're really starting at the same point. So the fact, if you do feel discomfort, honestly, you just say, okay, that's good. I can feel something, which means I'm doing something, which means something's happening. And I just need to navigate my way through that process.
And they come up, it's like they come up much later on. I'm sure everyone who's practiced a long time has.
Oh, yeah.
They come up like several weeks ago. I enjoyed back bending quite a lot. On my left side, there was this strange sensation when I came out. It was like I just ignored it, and I sort of thought, I'll stretch a bit more. And 3 or 4 weeks later, it's gone away. It's like, I was just made it something to be curious about, and it was actually something opening up, because as a result of that, my back bend got more stronger and more enjoyable.
Yeah, you reminded me years ago, you guys, in standing bow pulling posture, I used to have a tingling sensation running down the middle of my finger right when I would do standing bow, and it was a weird sensation, but there was some kind of nerve movement going on, and it's gone now, but yeah. So I too think it's normal throughout your yoga journey to, you're going to go into deeper layers, right? Too. It's great. That's great, Priyanka. It's so great to have you in the studio again. Yeah. Rajashree.
Wonderful.
Good morning, I guess.
She's muted, I think.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rajashree. Oh, you're so sweet to join us.
Oh, yeah, it's so much rain here.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
There's so much raining here.
Oh, it's raining.
Oh.
But it looks spectacular, Rajashree. It looks like it's an incredible place, and it's been a successful training so far.
Yes. I'm half asleep, but I'm joining. Is that okay without video? I planned everything to join with video, but last minute looks like my eyes are like.
That's okay. We're happy to have you with us. Yeah, we've already chimed in on a couple of questions, and where we actually ended one. Anybody got a question? We could go back actually if we wanted to. But anybody else? Christy, you have one? Joel, Angie? Rajashree, Priyanka is on. Do you remember talking to Priyanka on the last? She's back doing the practice now at the studio.
How long are you guys on? Because isn't it just 5 o'clock? I mean,
no.
2 a.m.
We started at 2 and it's almost 3, so we've been on almost an hour.
Oh my God, really? So it was 4 o'clock for my time?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's okay. That's okay.
Differences are hard, especially like long ones like that. So.
No, you know what happened? The timing is always hard to find. What time would be mine? Because I was awake yesterday, and then I thought it was yesterday, and then Aisha sent the message. I didn't see it that it is today, and she said, "Fine." Anyway, that's fine. It's not her fault. My fault too. Look at. Oh.
Rajashree, we have Kamal on, and he initially was asking How long have you been practicing, Kamal?
Oh, crikey, 15 years.
15 years.
Wow.
And he's working on his standing head to knee. Well, what advice would you give him? He's not quite locking the knee yet, right, Kamal?
No.
I'll just say keep doing it. It will get there. It's just, and foundation is very important. So keeping knee locked, leg straight is the most important. Definitely before moving forward for second part.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
And we had another question too, Rajashree, about half moon and this person's inability to feel the stretch on both sides. So we were talking in many different aspects about, you know, ensuring form, stretching up out of the waist, using your legs properly.
It's just the person needs to think that this is the side bend. So try to keep the in alignment side, like when he's gonna bend, and just try to push right and left. You know, if you're bending left, you're pushing right hips. You're pushing, bending right side, you're pushing left hips. But more you'll feel the stretch if you are more aligned.
Making sure you're doing the equal and opposite.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you great. We can hear you really good. Awesome. Any other question? Lenora, did I miss one that you were asking about? Trying to.
Well, I had asked about the knees and the dark spots, but I feel like we all kind of agree that there's movement happening. That shouldn't be happening.
Well, this is the only yoga series that we always talked about being a standing leg cannot be, and there is a reason for it, because you know the foundations for our every movement is start with the legs. And so, and the joints of the knee, joints of the ankle, joints of the hips is a part of the whole body, and the lower limbs means the legs are, it's very important because they all affects how we keep the leg in the position, because it's a lot of standing series is based on towards gravity, against the gravity, and pushing the joints certain degree angles. So if you bend the knee, the joints carries the tremendous bend there, because we don't do friction, we don't do jumping, we maintain the stillness. So the joint has a lot of impact on, and joint impact happen more if the muscles is not able to carry and support the joints. And so if you keep the leg straight, there is always a 100% chances that you will be use the muscles more, not the joints. And if joint is bent, then it gets certain times if you are not able to use the muscles, and degree of your bending, the flexions on the body or extension of the body can impact joint where muscles are not able to support it. So if you keep the leg straight, the knee is safe.
Yeah.
And the muscles, that's the basically that's why all the standing series we always focus on, make sure your leg straight. There is a reflex action little bit works on. If your hamstring is very tight, then a lot of time, those are big muscles. If you are not able to fully engaging the thigh muscles, that then knee gets chance to bend. But if we are if we are mindful more, then we could prevent getting harm or injury to our knee, keeping the leg straight more.
That makes such good sense, right? When you think about it, because doing your Bikram yoga practice that way, then think about all your activities that you're doing throughout the day, right? The joints can take the impact a little bit more if they need to, because you've used your building your muscular strength from your locked out knee in your practice.
Exactly.
Lenora, did you have a question?
I do, since we were talking about, Rajashree was talking about straight legs and then bending legs. So what I've noticed in the second posture in awkward, the last, I don't even know, but I've noticed that when I'm high on my toes, which is, I feel like I'm not getting as high as I used to, but high on my toes and I'm bending my knees, I used to always feel it in my toes, ankles, and in my thighs. My thighs would shake. Now I feel like I'm still getting low, but I'm feeling it in my knees. I'm not going to say it's painful. I don't feel like I'm having a tweak or anything like that, but I can feel my knees in a way that I just couldn't. And in a way, it is that same spot where I get all of those dark spots. So I don't know, maybe it's a theme, but I am feeling that, and I just kind of wonder how to balance that, since we were talking about straight legs and how to keep that, all of the joints well protected by using all of the legs. But now you're bending. How do we want to distribute our muscles to get the best protection for our joints?
Questions. Now, the second awkward is, if you have done practice, you notice if your spine is not straight, spine is bent forward, you are putting more weights on your knee.
Okay.
As soon as you're keeping your spine straight more, focusing on that, then you are really using and holding even the stability and the balance all on the spine and abdomen, because it's a weight distribution of the joints. So it's a bending knees, but still, if you have to come up more on the toes, which helps full foot engage each one, right and left, means the feet also has a pressure is carrying, and the same equivalence pressure is carrying by arms, as well as symmetrical pressure is giving to support shoulder and hip joint, as the whole spine. So the knee is less pressurized. Knee is on the top and the front, but knee doesn't hold all those weights on it. The threshold of the knees weights goes to the spine, towards all the way, stretching arms, going towards the back, and you coming up on the toes. So don't let the leaning forward, try to keep that's why the dialogue always, we say that leaning against the wall. So that means focusing on keeping the spine straight and stretching up the body.
Thanks. I think I am leaning a little bit. I'm trying to go down, but I need to just be up more so I can keep my back straight, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
That will be helpful.
It's normal to be, you will go forward, but that's the time to work with against it, just keep the straight.
So Lenora, I can kind of relate. I would say it's not about trying to be more upright. It's about being upright. So any amount of leaning forward, even a tiny little bit, will change the whole dynamic of how you're using your legs and your knees. And so I really noticed this myself, the difference in my practice when I started to teach the Bikram basics orientation for beginners. And I would demonstrate that posture by holding my own hair and pulling it up as I sat down in the posture, so that I was visually demonstrating the spine straight. And the moment I started to do that as a demonstration, I was really extending upwards and the spine was straight. And then everything in the lower body just there was a lot more grace and ease in the lower body, in the knees, the ankles, the toes, everything, for the fact that the spine was actually lifting up as I was sitting down, as opposed to it sort of sinking down and you're preventing it falling, which is the moment you lean forward, effectively you're in a collapsing state and you're trying to use muscles to prevent the full collapse. So it's very, very, very different when you're actively keeping your spine straight. It's literally night and day different.
Yeah.
And you
So on the subject of the awkward, so kind of different in first part of awkward, the object there is more to get the knees bent and the butt back rather than, and then later sit upright. Is that correct? Because sometimes I struggle with the whole awkward series. But first part of awkward, I mean, sometimes I'm literally like, my tummy is just, my breasts, my tummy, everything is just on my thighs because I'm trying so hard to get my legs down and, you know, like stretching forward, and it's complete, and that's okay to do that versus the second part where you're more upright. Now talk amongst yourselves.
Rajashree, you want to speak to that?
Yes, she said perfectly right. The first one is different. Second one is more keeping the upright position. I write that because the first one you are not on your toes, so your body gets, you know, normal way going forward. Some is no problem, but you try to create a, you know, stretching up, trying to do, because it's more important they're sitting down on the hips. So that's what's the focus. And when that happened, then whole legs carrying the weights for the knees, it's not that much pressure if the body little bit forward. But when you are on your toes and you are balancing, you already front, you know, the legs muscles and especially the calves below the knee to the toes, the whole area is so much on the shin is already aging with all other muscles. So second one is different. That's why the leaning up, which is very much Matt explained, is as a little bit you do, even every time you make it different. Yeah, it's true. Same thing. You understand very well. Sometimes we know how to do it, but when we do it, we challenge with it.
very much so.
Christy, I would also say to you, since you say you're struggling with it, I would say to you, do exactly the opposite of what you're doing. So when I see somebody in the studio who's like stretching forward like this and the chest is coming down, I'll make jokes about the fact that when you sit down at the dinner table, you don't plow your face into your food. You know, because if you do that, your bum stays up. Your action of bringing your chest and your face down will keep your hips up. So, you know, so for you, instead of the shoulders coming forward, keep the shoulders back like you were standing up straight, and try to keep your chest up as much as you can while sitting down in the chair, which is how you actually sit in a chair. It's not a different muscular movement from sitting in a chair. It literally is just like you sit in a chair. So yes, you inevitably lean forward a little bit in that particular action, but the goal is not to lean too much forward, because that's not how you sit in a chair. Does that make sense, Christy? So the more you can keep your chest up, knowing it's still forward, but chest up, head up, chin up, and sit down, you'll find that you'll have much more facility, because that is how you already sit in chairs, like a dining room chair or an office chair. Well, she's going to go and find a chair now.
In that posture is more mental, really is, because if there was a chair, automatically
Yes.
half of the class actually will go, oh yeah, there is actually a chair.
Yeah.
It's just mental state a little bit, and little bit, of course, the posture. We try to lean a little bit forward. It really, Rajashree explained the second part is a little better for the leaning back, easier. So yeah, it's more mental. It's the struggle and hardest posture for myself still this day. But I am actually trying to sit on the chair now more and more.
Yes, you did it the other day. I was that you did it.
There is a so if you really stuck on this, there is a simple experiment you can do at home or anywhere really where there's a wall. You get close to the wall. I mean, pretty close to the wall, to the point where your toes are probably no more than 6 inches from the wall, or maybe even 3 inches from the wall. And you put your hands up on the wall and you sit down into the chair, because the proximity of the wall and your hands on the wall prevents you leaning too far forward. And your body will do exactly the opposite, which is drop the hips down like you're sitting in a chair. And so you have to be close enough to the wall for it to work. But if you're trying to awaken a physical intelligence in the body, it's a very effective way to get a sensation of what you already know, because you do it when you sit at a dinner table. That makes sense, Christy?
Hey, Lenora.
I just walked over there and tried it.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
I sat in the chair when you came back.
Then you feel when you do that, because I know Bikram doesn't really like props too much, but sometimes I will practice postures outside of class with like a prop or in a pool and get the shape of the posture, so that you actually, when you're not worrying about falling over and balancing, when you get the shape, you can feel, oh, I'm not engaging that muscle at all. And that's where I need to contract, that's where I need to relax, or that's where I need to engage. So yeah, that little trick was real helpful, because you can feel where you actually need to squeeze or hold where I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to have a different place they're not working right. But that was a cool little thing.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Lenora, you said, and we can put two things together. You said that you're not coming up on your toes in second part of awkward as much as you used to. And then if you heard Rajashree say that when you come right up on your toes, you engage the legs, yes? The legs muscles. So that when you are lower on the toes, and sometimes people do that because they're cautious of their knees, but it's completely opposite, counterproductive. Because you come up, you engage the legs, you come up as high as you can, the legs are engaged, the knees are supported. When you come up cautiously halfway, you're getting that pressure with the joints again.
Yeah.
I see. It's weird, isn't it? We try to protect ourselves and we hurt ourselves.
Yes.
But it's also, but it's an interesting bigger topic, because it is all about being at the point of balance. So that same phenomena happens, say, in balancing stick. It's very, very common to see students leaning back on their standing leg a little bit. So now they're not actually balancing on the leg, they're counterbalancing on their leg. And counterbalancing is a very muscular activity that's stressful on the hip joint. Whereas balancing, being exactly at the fulcrum, is actually quite a restful operation, because when you're at the point of balance, the amount of energy that's required to maintain a point of balance is extremely low. That's why we use balance in mechanical systems like big heavy doors that weigh 10 tons but can be moved with a finger, because they are perfectly balanced. And so it requires virtually no energy to move it, the door. But if the door is just badly hung, it requires a great deal of force to move the door. So I think you can use this in second part awkward, but you can also use it, look elsewhere where you think you're balancing, but actually you're really not. You're just muscling it to hold it in place.
You know, it's interesting.
Think about finding the grace and ease, you know, the journey. In
but I feel like mentally sometimes, and I want to ask you, Rajashree, about the first part of awkward in a second too, but that's a really interesting point, Lenora, and you see it as teachers too, and even in my own practice, where there is a moment, right, sometimes when we're almost kind of sabotaging ourselves, like especially second part of awkward, when we're asking you, there's a lot of description to get up high in the toes, maximum like a ballerina, right? And to trust that. And sometimes what happens is you see somebody take their whole upper body back a little bit, like they're not trusting that they can stay high up on top of the toes, right? And you can see it in standing head to knee too, and as well as balancing stick. We're not quite kind of going forward, lamppost, solid, one piece up and down, right? And trusting that it's interesting. There's a little bit of this mental hesitation, right? That we have, and the yoga invites us to look at that, which is great, right? And then it's for all of us to have that journey. For me, second part of awkward, if I don't think that everything is continually stretching up towards the ceiling, then I won't have a good posture. I have to think that. I have to constantly think someone's pulling my hair up towards the ceiling, continually stretching, my spine up, right? And that way, when I do that, right, then I won't go forward or back. It's going up, right? So I'm thinking the right thought. Right? So that's a big thing too. Not doing something or don't do something or think about continually stretching your spine up towards the ceiling, like natural human traction, right?
And I add something?
Mm.
Yeah, go ahead, Angie, and then Rajashree. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What you're talking about right now, I see it in the ballet studio all the time. And it's that same kind of sabotage. And I just saw it in myself in yoga because I was trying so hard to stay back on my heels. I was hunkering down, using more than what needed. And then as soon as I stretched up, I was just standing there like my knees were hurting for some reason because I was hungry. It was too much. Whereas if you just stretch up, it changes everything. You see it in ballet. I feel it here.
Yeah.
And so sometimes too good is no good is kind of the point.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes.
What an insight for you, right? You created an optimal balance for you, right? Right. Rajashree, you were going to say something.
Yes, I was going to say, but I kind of forgot right now because you guys are all saying things right, but it's all in dialogue direction. The direction it says exactly the way we will feel and how to overcome that fear of not getting in. It's all physical and mental, and that's all there. Is in dialogue actually intact of step by step making us to get into that place. So I was just thinking that time when Michele, you are talking about all these postures and saying that what happened to the body and what needs to be happening. So it's between this, the process, because the process is when it's the right way, there is impact, and the impact is at the result is great, but in the beginning in the process there is a discomfort, and that's where we just give up. We just fear of that pain, and that we don't go in. You don't even feel a pain, you just feel some struggle there. So, but that's what exactly trust and what you saying, that was very nice. How you were saying is trusting it, and then same trust not fully apply to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yoga is so beautiful. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I have to leave for a class I'm going to teach.
Ah.
Thank you, everyone. And I have this comment for myself. My self-journey in the yoga is the fear of the mental state. And it is a physical aspect. When students come to the studio, they first acknowledge the physical, what we see. We try to see that first. We see our body, we see our movement. But inside is actually the mental fear of doing something, trusting. Can my body do that? Can I do that? As long as we can be a little bit brave, really fall, backbending, falling, really falling, but stretching and falling is a little bit of a trust that we have to build up and practice safely. That's all. I know every single day in my journey, I try to overcome a mental fear of that in the posture. So that's
great.
Yeah. Well, Rajashree, I will see you in a week. Oh my gosh. All right.
Okay.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Right.
Bye,
Thank
Michelle.
you
Have
all.
a good class.
Yes. Bye.
Since Michele brought that up, I had wanted to say something about, Lenora, when you come, as an example, when you come up on your toes all the way and you stretch whole, the spine, chest, legs, whole of the body up, and the spine is straight, and you sit down, you might fall out because you haven't been doing it, and it's absolutely fine. You just try again. There's no problem making a mess. As soon as you try the right way, what you haven't been doing, you're likely to make a mess, but you keep doing,
Yeah, I've gotten braver about falling.
Yeah.
But about the balance that Matt was talking about too. There is something about practicing at home. Sometimes you just really can focus on just the words and what you're doing or not doing. But in balancing stick, I've noticed I can get my leg up, the back leg up much easier. But then I feel it's all relative to the second part of awkward, that I kind of try to, I won't say I round my spine, but I sort of dive into the posture rather than just do the balance and the fulcrum kind of shift. And I find it really kind of fascinating that in our conversation, at least, the second part of awkward is really leaning into the balance and the fulcrum of the next posture, balancing stick, even though I know we have the third part of awkward to do. So I don't know what that means to everybody else, but in my mind, it all kind of connects. So it's just it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I would invite you to go back in the class to Half Moon, and you get a chance to do it in pranayama, and then you get to do it particularly a lot in Half Moon, of that total extension of the body. So from your toes and your heels all the way up through the entirety of your body, and so you get that sense, and it goes back to what Kamal was asking about with the legs, but obviously because the legs are a piece of that, but you're engaging everything. And so then in balancing stick, your goal is to keep that engagement as you come down. And it's very easy as you come down to have a moment where you take your foot off the gas pedal, and then you go, and then everything starts to get heavy. But when you're in full extension, everything should feel lighter. So sometimes the sensation of heaviness, like somebody was talking about sinking into their legs, that sensation of heaviness can be a tell to you that you've deviated from the natural engagement of the posture, no matter what you're doing, whether there's a heaviness in your feet, your ankles, your knees, your hips, your chest, wherever that, if you see a sudden increase in heaviness, it probably means you've disengaged from some part of the posture. Because like Rajashree was saying earlier about locking the knee, that there is a tremendous health when everything is really engaged, and there's a heaviness when it disengages.
Yeah, and especially awkward. And Rajashree, you can add to this, because awkward is really asking you to be present. Right? Okay, we say concentrate, meditate. I mean, it's asking, the moment you're not present, you're done.
Yeah, the whole thing is, a whole 90 minutes is to be present. And that's why we get so much mental benefit, because most of the time we are present and we are going to past and future. So the 90 minutes to be there present bring us more in, like it's systematically, it helps us through the physical body to the mind. It's present. And that's why we get so much benefit in our emotion, because for a 90 minutes, if you really be present, then you don't let anything else come into your brain to think and take the pleasure of being in present with yourself go away. That's why we feel that nice, beautiful equanimity. That's the whole thing about finding that equanimity when we end. And that gives us the whole day a beautiful energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's, and she was saying, you were saying that you feel that prior postures always make the next pose ready. You know, so that's what the sequence, if you go out of sequence, you won't feel that way. You got to do it the same way. You got to hold the pose. The way it is set up, if we switch anything, it changes the value of it.
Yeah.
So it's very important to practice the way it is, and each one, like deep breathing to the Kapalbhati, all helps one to next one. It will take you from benefit wise, health benefit or mental benefit, and then spiritually how you heal. You know, the healing comes from the way it's set up. It's set up from the deep breathing to the Kapalbhati all the way. So it's kind of like I think it's a beautiful to practice and be present to get the full essence of it, and you can embrace that time anything you experience, because we have only way to do it with embracing it, and that's gives us the mental power and the stability and the willpower, because of you facing it, you are challenging, and you are changing it, transforming it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating as a teacher on the podium, especially, you know, all the postures, but in, you know, the level of concentration to get up high in the toes, right? And your eyes aren't blinking, right? You're growing in your determination, right?
Tremendous concentration, in fact.
Right there, right?
It's
Everything else deadens, and there you are, present.
It's interesting that you say in different words, though, because it brings us back tremendous concentration.
Yeah.
Think of it, you know, it's like tremendous concentration. Wow.
You know,
Wow.
like people always ask me two questions. Where do you find the balance, you know? And it's like Sarah, how you saying the concentration. There is no key word for concentration. You just got to practice to concentrate. More you practice, concentration will come from the using concentration.
Yes.
Just like people ask, how you meditate? You only can learn to meditate by meditating.
Yes.
You got to try. Yeah.
Kamal, you have your hand up.
I do, because what Rajashree just said just made me think, and it might be the wrong time to ask this, and it's not to do with postures, it's more to do with the being in the present moment, and how as a new teacher I would deal with the situation where I teach. They allow smartwatches into the studio, and I have a tendency to let that really get to me when I see somebody do that in the middle of a class, and they do that again, and then they do it again. And although I've been told you've got to sort of like say, and I do, you said about being in the studio, about leaving all that stuff outside, being present in the moment, being still in your practice, being here 100% open eye meditation. I can't then let go of that person there with that blinking smartwatch. And I'm like, how can you turn up to your practice, step on that mat, be present, but at the same time be doing this? I mean, it might be more about me and than that person on the mat. I don't know.
What would you say to that, Rajashree?
Kamal, your question was a little bit, I got confused. Is it when you teach, how you see your students, or you think about?
Well, it's when I'm teaching and they come into the studio with smartwatches on.
Yeah, I often, right, that's why we always say the teacher must practice, because then you can connect with the students more. When
Yeah.
of growing yourself to feel the others, and then you can notice that time when you are teaching and you looking at it, someone, it's when you have a 40 people, you can really feel for everybody. You can only see the pose and you can help them to move the pose, from. But if you have private lessons or small class, then you can really feel your energy. If I'm on there, how he's doing or she's doing, how they're feeling. If you try to apply that mindset, then you will see what doing in there on the mat, they're exactly feeling on their body and mentally. So if mat is it is we the way our day goes, and whenever you practice, you really see how you feel mentally and spiritually and physically. So
How
you
would address somebody that's constantly looking at their smartwatch, though, Rajashree? Would you?
thing, and immediately you tell the person that you can understand, because I see that a lot of time, even they're not even watching smartwatch, but they are keep coming up, they're
You
agitated,
do?
they're very disturbed, not. And you just tell them that whatever the worries you are carrying, or if something is in your personal, pay attention to it and try to be still. I focus on more stillness that time, because be still, because yoga asana is all about be still and at ease, because the effects of the breath, or applying the breath more into that time, in that moment, will help them to be still, because they are disturbed, they are looking at it, time to finish, or they're thinking the email is coming, like that. If you ask about a smartwatch, I will not allow that even.
Okay.
Students, that's disturbed. That really does disturb. Smart carries as much as health meter, but at the same time, they carries a lot of more stress meter.
Matt, you were going to add to that.
Yeah, I think there's two completely different subjects here. One is your reaction to it, and the other one is their behavior. And I think you can't teach anybody anything if you have to teach through the mud of your own reaction, because then you're not really teaching them, you're just playing out your own stuff. And so I think that you have to find a way for it to mean nothing to you that they're doing that. And then when it means nothing to you that they're doing that, then you can see what there might be to teach about for them about that. So sometimes, so in our studio, people wear smartwatches. We don't disallow it. We don't allow phones in the room, but people often wear Apple Watches and such like. And if I see somebody repetitively distracting themselves, especially if it starts to become compulsive, what I'm addressing isn't that they're looking at their phone. I'm addressing a compulsiveness that I'm going to draw their attention to. Now, I do it through humor. I say to them, Christy, that watch is either telling you that your heart is still beating or the time is right now, and you probably knew the answer to both of those questions already without looking at your watch.
Yeah.
And it's done as a throwaway, and it's an example of how I particularly address that. But I don't address it when it's annoying me. So if I see it and I realize I'm annoyed by it, then I don't say anything, because I know if I speak from a place of annoyed by it, it's not going to be a teaching moment at all. It's going to be Matt being annoyed at something. And so I have to bite my lip and just center myself and let it pass.
Right.
Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Absolutely. Because I'm sort of like, this is yoga. and that's my thing that I have to learn myself, to let go of that, and practice dealing with it maybe the way you address that. And that's beautiful the way you do it. And unfortunately, I don't have a studio owner that would have given me that sort of advice. She looks at it like I mean, the comment I got the other day was, well, I only burned X amount of calories in your practice the other day. And I was like taken aback. I was like, well, you're not in there to burn. Well, you are, but as a sideline, that's, you know, you want to burn calories, go to a fitness class. You know, you've come to do yoga, and you know, your smartwatch wasn't there to tell me that you'd burn 500 calories in the practice. And that's when I first sort of like noticed that, is that what people are now doing with it? Or
so Kamal, I would also say we touched on this earlier in a slightly different context, and you used a phrase, and you've heard this phrase before yourself, which is trust the process. So just as a student, we would say to a student, trust the process, try and do the postures the way they're designed. And I would say as a teacher, trust the process, teach the way you were taught to teach. Let each moment go, just focus on teaching what's in front of you, and trust the process. You know, so there'll be somebody who's highly agitated and fiddling around with their towel and their mat and their water bottle and looking at their watch one day, and maybe 2 years from today you look at them and they're like night and day different. And so will it really have mattered that they had that one class where they were being agitated? It's just where they were on that particular moment in time, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that. I feel like I love, Kamal, where you're coming from. Don't lose it. The moment you step on that podium, right, you're holding a standard, and don't shy away from that standard. And I agree with Matt, you have to detach yourself, but concentrate on who you're being and who you continue to want to be, and be that example of the yoga. And it will be gradual, but you will have an effect. You will have an effect. There'll be less times that they'll look at their watch. They'll know that you're on the podium. But the moment you go tit for tat, you've lost it. Okay. So I applaud you, you know, especially if you're alone in this, but you keep that standard. You're serving their best interest, by the way. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I think I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michelle, we've run out of time.
Oh my gosh.
Believe it. Oh my God.
No, I can't actually. What wonderful conversation. You know, when Matt and Sarah and I talk about it, these are just wonderful to really kind of chew on anything, right, regarding yoga. So this one included. Kamal, it's a pleasure to have you. You know, Priyanka, of course, you know, Christy, Lenora, and our gal that was just here too from
Michelle, where is Common teaching?
Where are you teaching, Kamal? Share with Rajashree where you're.
So I teach in a studio in Stockport in the UK.
Okay.
Manchester.
Okay, Manchester. Oh, very nice. Great.
Yeah.
We also had, did we not have Matt and Sarah, help me here, Marilyn? Was that
Marilyn from Leicester, but from Leicester,
yeah.
UK as well.
Yeah, because I'll be visiting soon, Kamal. Love to meet.
Oh, really? That's music to my ears.
Yeah.
Rajashree, maybe go back to sleep for a little bit. I know you have a big day probably today.
It's Sunday and it's a Lakers game we are going to watch a Lakers game.
Boo. No, I mean, hey. Sorry, Rajashree. No, enjoy.
I'm from Cleveland, so you know who I have to root.
No, jeez. All of you, go away, all of you. No. Anyway, what a pleasure. This will be recorded, so you know we can share it or listen to it again. It is recorded, but it will be on our YouTube channel soon. So we'll see you guys again.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajashree. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.